everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Frosty in our limited series on multiple myeloma and cancer issues. Today, I thought it would be a great day to talk about something that's hard for us, actually. Once we get diagnosed, we go through that shock of diagnosis, but then we have to decide, who do we tell and when do we do it? So I'll just kind of share my story about that and hope that maybe that helps you all in making your decisions on what you want to do, and who you want to let know about um, your diagnosis. So I was diagnosed when I was 58. I, at the time, had a son who was still in high school and he was 15. So some of that did play into who I decided to tell. Of course, I told my husband first thing, and we decided to tell our son because he did live at home and this was going to affect him. I knew that he would, well, first of all, I know, he knew that I'd been going to the doctor and having some issues, and I didn't want him to be blindsided with me going to treatment and things that, would happen then. I did end up having a stem cell transplant. I was diagnosed in March of 2022, and I had a stem cell transplant in September of 2022. So he was a very active young man. He was on the football team in high school and just go, 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 go. And I just felt that, we just felt that it was important for him to know as well. He also played baseball that year. And, when I was first diagnosed, he was actually in the middle of his baseball series. So, it wasn't easy, but I'm glad that we told him because I thought it was important for him to know. But as far as telling people outside of our, little family here, that was kind of hard. And I only decided to tell people that I was the closest to. I told my husband, my son, I told my sister. And for a while, that was all that I told. I do have a daughter who is married and has two beautiful children, and they were living out of state at the time. Um, and I also had my only parent that was surviving was my mother, who was, I was 58, she was 88 at the time, and she was actually um, in a assisted care because she had had some issues going on her own. And, you know, I actually opted not to tell her. And the reason that I did that is because she was bedridden. There's absolutely nothing that she could have done. And I know you say, well, she could pray for you. Well, yeah, she could, but put yourself in the shoes of your mom. As a mom, the first thing you want to do when you hear that your child is harmed or ill is to go help them. And if you can't go help them, then you're putting a burden on them. By telling them, you're actually putting a burden on them. And I just felt that that wasn't anything that she needed to hear or to be burdened by. So I opted not to tell her. Now I did know that when I, went to see her, because we were in a different state also. But I know that when I went to see her and I was wearing a wig after my stem cell transplant, I'm sure she could tell I was wearing a wig, and maybe she wondered. I don't know. Um, but I just hope that she never found out because it's just, a burden. And, some people that you tell, if you're working, um, I would be very careful about telling your coworkers because once you do, I feel like you just become the subject of gossip. And you really don't need that in your life. You don't need the stress of walking into a room and having the conversation stop because you walked into a room. You don't need the burden of having those looks like, oh, you know what I mean. um, you don't need that. And it's very private. And especially at first, when you don't know what your treatment's going to do or what's going to happen, would just caution that's probably not the best thing to do is to tell your coworkers, especially if you live in a big, if I'm sorry, if you work for a big company, um, that can just have some dire consequences. Not meaning, maybe some people don't mean to be rude, but You don't need to hear it every day. You need to worry about yourself. Hello, Tink. That's sorry for the noise. That's my little doggy coming around the corner. Um, so I was working at the time, and luckily I was actually working out of the home. So I didn't have to go in and tell people, hey, this is what's going on. I was able to do it by phone. And I didn't tell them once until I had to go on leave because I just, once I couldn't work anymore, of course I had to tell them then. And that's what I did. That's how I chose to deal with that. Also, I was living in a city that I hadn't lived in for too long. Um, we'd only been here about 4 years when I got diagnosed. And honestly, I didn't know that many people really. My son is very involved in school sports, so we were very busy going to, you know, football games, practice, and junior high school basketball games, basketball practice, baseball games, baseball practice, and we loved every minute of it. Um, that it kept us very busy. And I think the only people that we really knew were the people that were involved in the same school and who had children on the same teams and everything. And I didn't choose to tell people. I Once things got really busy with football, the football season in high school, we did tell one person who was able to help us out quite a bit. But then that's all we needed. Everybody knew then. So I'm not upset about it because it just made things easier for us not to have to tell people. And it probably helped people to understand why I wasn't able to volunteer as much as I would have. We would do dinners and things like this, and I did volunteer as much as I could, but it just kind of it did take a little burden off so that I knew people would understand when, um, we're going up and down. You go to the big, huge football stands, and maybe we're sitting down towards the bottom where we normally would probably have sat up towards the top. um, little things matter quite a bit, and a lot of that has to do with who you tell and how things are. Most people are very, very kind, and I'm just personally somebody that is very quiet about my condition. I don't talk about, I don't talk about it a lot to people. I don't, um, I wasn't somebody that would wear a t-shirt that said, warrior or cancer survivor or, fighting or, anything that would bring attention to my diagnosis. I did not do. As soon as I had my stem cell transplant, sorry, and I lost my hair, I knew right away I was not going to walk around with a scarf on my head or walk around bald. I wanted things to be as normal as possible for my family. So I wore wigs constantly. And, um, I did as much as I could to be as normal as possible without putting such a burden on everybody around me. It's not only about us, and we can't be that self-centered and self-conscious that we put everything on the people around us. It's not fair to them. And it's not really, I don't think, how we should be. I think if you keep your attitude as positive as possible, get up in the morning, um, wash up, do your hair, put at least a little bit of lip gloss on or something if you wear lip gloss, or, just do at least a little bit of makeup or something that makes you look halfway decent. You feel a lot better about yourself. And if you feel better about yourself, then that's going to exude from you and that's going to help your loved ones around you. Um, I know it's different for everybody. And for some people, they need that. Um, I don't want to say recognition because I don't think it's recognition that people are looking for. I just think it's some sort of comfort. So if you go to the store, you go to a restaurant or something, and somebody's wearing maybe a scarf on their head instead of a wig, or they're wearing a t-shirt that says, I'm a warrior, or, something that brings attention to their condition, or, um, don't fault from them because maybe they need that sort of comfort. I was older when I got diagnosed. I wasn't in my 20s. I wasn't in my 30s. I had children that are grown. I had grandchildren already, and I had a son that was still in high school. And I think we all deal with things differently, and we just need to kind of process that at first and decide how are we going to deal with this and who needs to know and who are we going to tell. Um, it's not an easy decision, but I just want to encourage you that to take your time. Don't come home from the doctor's office and freak out and go on any social medias that you have and start pounding on the keyboard like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Because I think that is probably not the best, probably not in your best interest, because things change at first. Once you get diagnosed and you start your treatment, things are going to change a little bit. Maybe you'll be on one kind of treatment, then you'll go on another kind of treatment. And plus, you don't know, you don't know what other people are going through around you. And somebody may have just had a terrible tragedy in their life, and you're going in and going, oh, look at me, I have cancer. That's not necessarily, what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're telling somebody on their time as well. Be considerate and think of other people. I always say it's, cancer. One thing that people tell me is like it's not a race. It's a journey, and it's a journey that we all go through that are dealing with this. You know, we have a lot of decisions to make as far as our treatments are concerned. We have a lot of decisions to make as far as what we want to do and how much we can do. And we need to process all of that. And we need to kind of see how that's going to work in our lives and what, if anything, is going to be affected. And do we really need to tell people? So of course, eventually I did tell everyone in my family because it's important that they know. At some point, it's rude not to say anything. The only one I never told was my mother because she didn't need to know. And I didn't want to harm her or cause her undue stress, both for her and myself, because I knew if I told her, then when I called her, it'd be like, oh, how are you doing? And it's like, no, no, no. I just wanted to, let her be in peace and, you know, go through things that way. So, it's up to you. Who do you want to tell? And why do you want to tell them? So I think before you do anything, before you make any harsh decisions or fast decisions, sorry, it's hard to say decisions. Before you make any decisions, maybe put some things on paper and say, okay, who do I want to tell? And then to decide, why do you want to tell them? And do you need to tell them? And let those decisions guide your way. All right, well, I hope this helped you in some small way. And peace be with you. And I hope you have a great week. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.